Hello everyone. So basically, a couple of months ago, I was looking through YouTube because I was trying to make a Vish Kal Blood Arbiter Magic the Gathering deck, but I found that no one had done like a tutorial of cards to put in the deck to make it as powerful as possible and to optimize it as much as possible. So I decided to make a tutorial on how to build a Vish Kal deck, just for anyone out there who's wanting to build one. So here we go. I've got the sideboard of Stain the Mind in case you know your opponent's deck and you want to get rid of a card. It reads, name a non-land card, search your player's library, hand and graveyard for any number of cards with that name and exile them. Then that player shuffles his or her library. So just card removal in the deck. And then because I've got an Eye Twitch in this deck, I need a lesson. I run Introduction to Annihilation as some simple removal. For any of you who don't know what Vish Kal does, it's 7 mana, 4 generic, 1 white, 2 black, 5/5 with flying and lifelink, which has a sack outlet, to put a 1/1 counter on it, where X is the creature's power. And it also has an added ability, added removal, to remove all 1/1 counters from Vish Kal, and target creature gets -1 until end of turn for each -1/-1 counter removed this way. So it's got some attached removal. It's just an all-round great card. And the lifelink makes it so you always stay on a high life total. Okay, so the cards in the deck are mostly low mana cost with death triggers. So I'll show you a couple examples. Say Eye Twitch. Here's the Eye Twitch I was talking about. When this creature dies, learn. So you would play Swamp on turn 1, and then you'd play the Eye Twitch, and then you keep on playing creatures on turn like 3, 4, 5, and ramping a bit with death triggers. And then when Vish Kal comes out, sack them all and make them really big and get loads of value. That's basically the plan of the deck. And it's got lots of triggers that happen when creatures die, such as Mate's Bond, which is a really powerful card in the deck. It says, whenever Mate's Bond or another non-land permanent you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a permanent that shares a card type with it. So if I have this on the battlefield when I sack loads of creatures to Vish Kal, all my opponents will have to sacrifice all their creatures. So really powerful. So obviously a Soul Ring, an Extraction Specialist to go through my graveyard and return like combo pieces like Zilliport Cutthroat from my graveyard to the battlefield, and I've got lots of cards like that. I'll show you a couple examples later. Taste Karlov. This can be used as a commander as well, but I find when I run it as my commander, I often get a lot of value, but I never am able to turn that into a win. But with Vish Kal, you can kill them with commander damage, with like Vish Kal being really big. So I've got a lot of removal in this deck as well, including Vindicate and Utter End. I've also got some things to sack on like instant sorcery, such as Deadly Dispute, Plumb the Forbidden, and also Village Rites as some low card draw. So talking about card draw, Liliana's Standard Bearer is really good. So on the turn you sack everything with Vish Kal, you flash it out at the end, or not necessarily flash it out, but play it at the end of the turn, and you draw a bunch of cards to refill your hand with creatures with death triggers. So here's Zilliport Cutthroat that you would return to the battlefield. Some nice removal. You're going to have lots of creatures in your graveyard, so Hallowed Spirit Creeper is really good because it creates lots of trump blockers and lots of things to sack to Vish Kal. Another 1 mana thing with 1 mana creature with a death trigger. Gleamcrawler. This is an interesting card in the deck. So it says, I know it's hybrid Golgari, but you can still run it. It's a 6 mana, 6/6 with trample. At the end of your turn, return all creature cards from your graveyard to your hand that were put there this turn from play. So if you sack all the creatures, then you play the Gleamcrawler, and then at the beginning of your end step you just get it all back and you can play it all again. Very good card. This is a new card from Baldur's Gate. It's called Minthara Merciless Soul, and it has Ward X, where X is the number of experience counters you get, and it's a 2/2. At the beginning of your end step, if a opponent you control left the battlefield, which is going to happen a lot in this deck, then beginning of your end step, if a opponent you control left the battlefield this turn, you get an experience counter. And it also says, creatures you control get a 1+1 counter for each experience counter you have. So, this is a really powerful card. It buffs all your creatures, and it's hard to mess with because of the ward. A Vorpal Sword. Basically, it's a low drop that you can attach to Vish Kal late game, or a small creature with a death trigger. And it gives it death touch, so people like Voltron decks might not want to block it, so their Voltron doesn't die. And it has an 8 mana activation ability. Until end of turn, Vorpal Sword gains whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game with an equipped cost of 2 black. So, that's a good card. It's sometimes useful. Wish Kal Talisman, you know, just a tutor for some specific cards. And there are some combos in this deck which I'll show you later, including Sun Titan and Animate Death, including a sack outlet, though it has to have a sack outlet. So, 1 mana tap, remove a wish counter from Wish Kal Talisman, search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. An opponent gains control of Wish Kal Talisman. Activate this ability only during your turn, and it has 3 wish counters on it. So, you can activate this 3 times. So, if you're playing 2-player, then when you activate it, it'll go to your opponent, and when your opponent activates it, it'll have to go back to you. But in Commander, it's quite a politics piece. So you can give it to someone, and then with the card you get, you can help that person to get it back and get the card that you really want. I don't know, anything like that. Unearth, just some low-costed recursion. I found when I play this, it's really useful because total casting cost 3 or less for 1 mana is a lot, and when you don't need it, you can cycle it for a card. So pretty good. So I've got a couple board wipes in this deck, including Ingarroot's Wake, which is a 9 mana, 7 generic and 2 black, for destroy all creatures and planeswalkers you don't control. So it's a complete one-sided board wipe that completely destroys your opponents and leaves everything you have intact. Fleshbag Marauder. I found that this is some really good removal of a kind in the deck because you're going to be wanting to sacrifice creatures anyway. So when you play this, it says when Fleshbag Marauder enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. So you can sacrifice the Fleshbag Marauder if you don't have anything else that you want to sack. You get all ETB and death triggers, and all of your opponents have to sacrifice creatures. I think pretty good. Farantano Snarl. A Mind Stone just as Commander staples. Okay, so I've also got a Dockside Chef, which is a 1 mana enchantment creature, human citizen with activated ability, 2 mana, sacrifice an artifact creature, draw a card. I find that in the early game, you don't want to have all your death triggers just sitting there, waiting for Vish Kal. Sometimes you want to sack them for value, so Dockside Chef can do that easily. Goldmere, just as like a Soul Ring or like a Mind Stone, except it is a creature, so it can block, attack or block, or you can sack it for value as well, so I find they're good. Okay, the rest of the deck. So I've got Vilis, Broker of Blood in the deck, because I often have a lot of spare mana open this deck. Paying 2 life isn't too much of a problem, because I'm gaining a lot of life from Vish Kal. And it says, whenever you lose life, which you do with the activated ability, draw that many cards. So if you activate its activated ability, so you're paying 1 mana to pay 2 life, draw 2 cards, and you can snipe a small thing your opponents control. So 8 mana, 5 generic, 3 black for an 8/8 with flying. Not great of a weight, but the abilities are really powerful and they can draw you a lot of cards. So, a Burnt Offering. I added this to the deck recently and I played it a couple times and I found it's really useful because for 1 mana you can sacrifice a creature to add any mana combination, black or red, I know, but you're just going to add black. In cast combination, it's equal to the creature you sacked casting cost. So if you've got a big creature, say you've got Vilis and your opponent turned it off or something with anything, you can, or your opponent tries to destroy it, you can just play can just play the Burnt Offering in response, as it's an interrupt or an instant, and sack the Vish Kal to get 8 mana, and you can do all sorts of things with 8 mana. So I got Sengir the Dark Baron, which is a legendary creature, 6 mana, 4 generic, 2 black, for a 4/4 flying. Whenever another creature dies, which is going to be happening a lot, put 2 1/1 counters on Sengir the Dark Baron. It also says whenever another player loses a game, you gain life equal to that player's life total as the turn began. So this creature can get really big, really fast, and I've often won games with this. So if you're thinking of building a Vish Kal deck, have Sengir and maybe something to go with it, as it's got partner to have as a ult commander. Arcane Signet, mana rock ramp. I've got an Abhorrent Overlord, as my commander has 2 pips and this has 2 pip. You at least create 4 1/1 black harpies. And because at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice creature doesn't matter too much, because you're probably just going to sack it straight away for loads of value. And then you have loads of other creatures you can sack to Vish Kal or anything else. And it's a 7 mana 6/6 with flying. Ashnod's Altar. This is also a very important piece in the deck. It can sack a creature to add 2 colourless mana to your mana pool, and it's a 3 mana artifact. So I found when I've had lots of tokens, and you've got a spell, you've got lots of cards in your hand you want to play, or you've got a card that has X in its mana cost, and you just want to play it for loads to get loads of value, this often helps you with those sorts of things. Usher some nice removal as I talked earlier. Massacre Worm. I love this card because in this deck, because there's a lot of removal, so your creature's opponent control is going to be dying a lot. And it says when it enters the battlefield, creatures your opponent control get -2/-2. Whenever a creature your opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. So over time, that can really whittle down the life total for finishing them with Vish Kal. Mere Battlesphere. This is the same as the Abhorrent Overlord. It just creates loads and loads of tokens for you to sack for value when it ETBs. Daxos Specialized Sun. I'm not sure. This is kind of a iffy card you can run in the deck if you want. But it says whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, you gain 1 life. So that's going to be happening quite a lot, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's worth it. Okay, so that's the deck. That is the deck. And I have a pretty good win rate with this deck, I can't lie. So, I don't know, you could put it together. I sometimes find that I don't have enough lands, so you could swap out cards for lands if you wanted to. But I've got some creature ramp, I've got a dark ritual in there, so I think I've got enough, but you can edit the deck how you want. It's not meant to be like a, those budget videos some people do where like you're meant to follow the deck step by step. I just think it's basic guidelines for what you can do with this deck. Again, just play up to turn 5, 6 or 7. Play loads of creatures with sack triggers or death triggers, or like things that trigger when other creatures die on the battlefield, and then you play Vish Kal, sacrifice everything, get Vish Kal really big and get loads of value, and then hopefully you win the game in the next turn or 2 with commander damage. Okay, that's it. I'll see you soon for another deck that I built tutorial. See ya!